Oh man, I don't want Jeff Spring's job. He has a stressful job. It's the kind of thing where once it's established that like there's a group of women in the space, it almost like explodes. Because I mean, throw pink, it's a weird thing because it's not a major, but it's technically an A tier, but it feels like a major. And as far as I'm concerned, I beat the field that's at an Elite Series event every week, right? But still hunting for that first, right, Elite Series win, that first like actual major win.
Hey everyone, it's Greg from Six Sided Discs, and welcome to All Six Sides, our podcast where we explore the world of disc golf from every angle. Today we're joined by 2023 Throw Pink U.S. Women's Disc Golf Champion and University of Texas at Dallas's 2016 second team All-ASC East outside hitter, Holyn Handley. Holyn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, what's up, Greg? That was funny there, the little bit about volleyball. No one's dug into that yet on the disc golf side of things.
I know. Did I get the volleyball information correct? Because I definitely don't know what I'm talking about.
Pretty close. I was actually a right side hitter, but I mean, it's the same as an outside, just the other side of the net.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so it would be, I'm going to put that then on UT Dallas's website because as I was trying to do research on you for this interview, a lot of information was still coming up on your college volleyball career.
Cool. Well, I didn't realize they still had all that stuff up. Cool.
I'll ask a little bit more about that later, but first, before we dive in, I want to give a quick plug for your 2024 Tour Series, which we just got in recently, and I'm sure hopefully available pretty much everywhere right now. Mm-hmm. And you went with the Vulture for the second year in a row, if I'm not mistaken, for your Tour Series disc. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
So this being your second season with the Discraft Elite team, what is the approach to a Tour Series disc? Do you have some say in choosing what that is? And if so, why the Vulture?
Yeah, so we do get a lot of say in what the Tour Series are. It is a little bit of like seniority rules. So like I'm not going to get a mold of somebody who's been on the team for a while unless they kind of want to do something else. But yeah, when I joined the team, they originally asked me to start thinking about Tour Series, and obviously I wasn't as familiar with the lineup, but in that kind of initial trial of discs, I knew the Vulture would be in my bag, even if it did, a disc kind of beat in a little bit, and so sometimes the way something flew when you got it ends up not being how it flies later, but I knew with its overstability is like, even if this beats in, like it'll have a spot in my bag. And so I went with that. And then, I mean, I was very happy with the Vulture all last year. I think at one point I had 3 in the bag. Right now I just have 2 in the bag, but I was like, I mean, this is clearly a good disc. It's been very consistent. It's held its overstability over the entire year, so I see no reason to change. And then, just kind of, Discraft kind of likes it when we stay consistent with the Tour Series, because then you can kind of build almost like an expectation of like, oh, the Tour Series, Luna's coming out, or the Tour Series Fierce, or whatever. People get big about the Tour Series Thrashers, right? So having some of that consistency is just better for the consumer generally.
Well, and I think it's cool because Discraft changes that plastic every year, so you can sort of expect to maybe get a disc that you like or a mold that you like in a different plastic, so you either get a different feel or maybe even like a different stability as well.
Yeah, totally. And the Z Flex plastic feels really good. I especially like it for forehand. I just put Aaron Gossage Raptor in the bag before last weekend because that seemed to come out just a little bit straighter than the stock Z Raptors. And then it's just like that softer feel just feels really nice. Also, I had never really messed around with grenades before, like, where you hold the disc upside down and you throw it like that. I'd never messed with those before, but actually getting it in that softer plastic, like it doesn't hurt my hand. So that's a usable shot now. I was going to use it at Texas State's, but the wind ended up being really terrible for it. But yeah, that softer, like grippier plastic. I think it's a really cool blend. I think people are really going to like it.
Yeah, we've had them up on our website for just a couple days, and we've already sold quite a few of them, so we're pretty happy about that. They are definitely awesome. And shout out to Aaron Gossage, because I'm also bagging that Raptor. It's really nice.
Nice. Yeah, I love Aaron. He's a cool guy.
Holyn, you're one of the fastest rising talents in the FPO field, in a field that's already getting more and more competitive. So if we look a little bit further back, you played your first sanctioned event in January 2020 in MA3, and just 17 months later, you finished 28th at the 2021 PDGA World Championships. You're also, at the time of this recording, or at the time that I looked it up a couple days ago, number 3 in the UDisc World Rankings, number 6 in the PDGA World Rankings, and 5th on Stat Mando. So I guess my question there is, what appears from the outside anyways is like a really rapid rise into the sport. When and how were you first introduced to disc golf? Where did that journey begin for you?
Yeah, so after college, I moved out to Southern California for a job. And, we'd been living there a few years. Me and my boyfriend, we've been living there for a few years, and we were kind of looking for some new hobbies to try. We were both getting a little sick of being inside so much, going to the 9 to 5 life. And so we were kind of looking for stuff that was a little more outdoors that we could get into. We tried a whole bunch of stuff. Like we tried to get into rock climbing and surfing and hiking, and nothing had really stuck. And so then, one week, he had found disc golf on like YouTube or something. I don't know exactly where he found it, but it looked like, really easy barrier to entry. We'd already kind of liked playing catch with the frisbee. So it was kind of already lining up with something we like to do together. And it was like really easy to just get outside and do it for a couple hours. And we had a ton of courses near us. So went to Dick's Sporting Goods, got the starter pack, and went to like a little pitch and putt course, Deer Park in Irving, if anyone's or sorry, Irvine, Deer Park in Irvine, if anyone's heard of it. But yeah, we were terrible. I was just as bad as everyone else's when they first pick up a disc of, just kind of flinging my arm around and it's going 80 feet if I'm lucky. Um,
Yeah, nose up as high as it goes far, right?
oh yeah. Oh yeah, every now and again I have to post videos from that day so that people I can be like, no guys, like really it was bad. It was really bad. But yeah, we started playing there and then checking out Huntington Beach and La Mirada, El Dorado, everything in that kind of little LA area. And yeah, we just like, as bad as we were, we just kept going back. It was the same thing that hooks everybody else is like, you can't explain it. I'm terrible at it, but like you get one or two good throws in a round and it makes you come back for more. Started watching coverage, and then like later that following summer, I kind of wanted to actually start throwing well, and so that was when the first time I actually looked at video of myself throwing, and I'd been watching a lot of pros, and I was like, man, I don't look like that when I throw. And so that kind of started the journey of, doing field work and trying to get my form better. And yeah, it was like I never had any intention of competing even or playing, certainly not playing professionally. But I just kind of got hooked on that continuous improvement and then wanting to go play every weekend, and it just never waned. And then eventually I got to a point where I was actually pretty good and I kind of had, the opportunity to go and play at a higher level.
You mentioned kind of looking at footage and analyzing your own form. Was there a specific player that you were looking at, or players that you were trying to like pick pieces off of to incorporate into your own form, or was it more kind of self-analyzing your own technique?
It was definitely both. Probably the players I looked at the most were honestly just the ones who put themselves out there content wise. So like Simon was one of the first people I looked at. I looked at Ezra a bunch. I looked at Paige because those were the people who like had stuff on YouTube and talked about form.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I tried to look at players on the FPO side who had like kind of a similar body type to me, just to see what they were doing. And then, looking at a lot of different players, I could see like, okay, well, what's consistent across others? Because, I obviously played volleyball before. I was into like lifting and stuff. And I know that from that there are always like principles of good technique, but then there's going to be individual differences. And so I was trying to look at people who maybe had similar body type to me and also look at multiple people so I could kind of pick out like, okay, what are the things that everyone is doing? Because that's probably the stuff that I should be trying to do.
Yeah.
And then what are the things that like are kind of their individual little take on it. And so, I kind of broke it down into like, okay, I should probably be trying to get my arm like this. I should probably, have my feet offset with, perpendicular to like all the really simple basic stuff and just trying to build off of that. And then I've kind of developed, what I have today.
As you started competing, do you feel like there was a moment, and I think a lot of us outside, spectators of the sport, people who are watching coverage, probably first heard about you when you were on Terry Miller's coverage at the Maricopa Open. I believe that was in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
If I have the date correct, yes.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But was there a specific time that you sort of realized that you had that ability to take that next step and compete at that higher level?
Yeah, so I I played for about a year just in FA1. And then whenever I had my first tournament where I shot over 900 rated, I was like, okay, that's probably a good time to move up. And then yeah, the Maricopa Open's so funny because like the only reason I even went there is because we weren't allowed to run tournaments in California because of COVID.
Yeah.
I was just like so like desperate to go play a bigger tournament, that I got a friend to road trip out there with me and split an Airbnb, and then it was kind of crazy to then go and win. I mean, I think Katrina and Jen maybe weren't having the best weekend. I think they would probably agree with that, especially on the putting green. But then I just happened to have a pretty good weekend. Had one of my best weekends up until that point. Um, and yeah, I don't know if I didn't like kind of think that I could go on tour until like about at least a year later. Like it took a while for me to like actually admit to myself that like one, I wanted to tour, and then to even think that I was good enough to do it. I kind of thought I was just going to stay at that like, you know, kind of like what Owen was doing before she went back on tour, because she was kind of my litmus test of like this is what a pro looks like, and she was 950 rated but didn't really tour much, and I was like, okay, maybe I can get to that level.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until like the very end of 2021, after I went back on Terry Miller's podcast and told him I wasn't going to tour, and then changed my mind about a week later.
Well, so I think Maricopa was the time where I think a lot of people saw you for the first time. But I will say one of the first times that
Hmm.
maybe I realized your level, and it was a little bit later compared to like even what we have here in Ohio. You came to the 2022 Brent Hambrick Memorial Open, and we were one of the vendors there. So I don't think I
Hmm.
ever had a chance to meet you or anything, but I was, keeping tabs on the scores. And going into the final round, you had something like a 17 or 18 stroke lead over the rest of the field, which was to us
Hmm.
like, holy crap, this is obviously like a different level.
Yeah, that's funny. I actually just played with one of my card mates at that tournament again here at Texas State's Michelle Frazier. Hadn't seen her in a while. But also just that course, like it was one of those courses where it was kind of an MPO layout that we were playing on. So it was like
Hmm.
a lot of the holes just weren't reachable by the field, and distance was a huge advantage. And I find that when we play on that kind of course, I tend to do a lot better.
Come back just briefly to volleyball. Transitioning from a competitive team sport to then later a competitive individual sport, what were some things that you found were the same, and what were some things that you found were different or challenges about approaching an individual sport versus a team sport?
Yeah, so an individual sport versus the team sport, it's completely different. I mean, the pace is completely different. The team's different. The like kind of team around the team is completely different. Because really in college, it's like you kind of at some level you just show up and work hard. Like you don't really have to do much else beyond that. But the first big thing was like, well, I don't have anyone telling me when practice is or what we're working on or what to do when I go to the gym or where we're competing or how we're getting there. I'm having to deal with like all of that stuff. So I'm like not only the player, but I'm also the administration. Um, and then, the actual game itself, like in a team sport, if you have first of all just one role to play. Like my main job was, hit, score, and then also block, and then a little bit of defense. And if I'm having an off day hitting, I've got other people on the court who can hit, and so just feed them the ball instead, and I'll try to make up, and contribute in some other way. And then also if I'm having a really, really bad day, like the coach can just take me out. There's someone on the bench who can come in and do the job that day. But that just doesn't exist in disc golf. Like if I'm having an off day in any one skill,
Yeah.
um, you kind of have to deal with it. You have to either figure out how to get it going, or it's just not going to be your day. And so that's been a huge thing. And then also just the pace of things. Like in a fast-paced sport like volleyball, you don't have time to think about your mistakes because you're moving on to the next play, and the next play is like 10 to 20 seconds long. Whereas in disc golf, like it's, each shot is longer than 10 to 20 seconds, right? You
Yeah.
get 30 seconds for a shot, and then you're waiting for a few minutes, and then you have another shot, and you're waiting for a few minutes, and, the round takes hours. And so, yeah, you have an opportunity for a lot of overthinking and a lot of ruminating. And yeah, and then lastly, it's just tough, like you don't have a coach, you don't have
Yeah.
anyone telling you like something to just get you into gear. Because like my coach in college, like she knew what to say to every individual player to kind of like get them going if they were having a rough bit. But you just have your self-talk, which may or may not be positive and may or may not be helpful. Yeah, in terms of similarities though, like just the kind of the discipline around it, that's something that I definitely carried over. So if I set that like, okay, this is what I think my practice schedule needs to be, this is what I think my weightlifting schedule needs to be. I do a very good job of sticking to it and like bringing a good level of effort and energy every time I go out there. I just have to kind of almost divide it into like, okay, this is the planning bit and this is the executing bit, and we don't let those bits talk to each other as much.
So, and I sort of wondered about this. I played tennis in high school, and when I started playing disc golf, I noticed there were some things that translated well. Like a backhand form was very easy, natural, very similar mechanics to a tennis like backhand swing.
Hmm.
But a forehand in tennis does not translate to a forehand in disc golf,
Hmm.
where I was like rolling my wrist and shanking all my forehands into the ground because I was trying to put topspin on the ball.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that.
So I was wondering
Yeah.
what if any sort of mechanics translated really well from volleyball, and what were some that you had to like unlearn and like break that muscle memory?
Yeah, I don't really feel like I had any bad habits that carried over because I mean in volleyball like the hitting is actually very similar to like throwing a forehand because in volleyball you do finish very like wrist forward like that. So I think I naturally have very like snappy and whippy like arm and wrist. So I think compared to most FPO players, like I have a way faster sidearm than pretty much anybody. So really like once I started, instead of being like here and just kind of come down
Yeah.
here, I get like a little extra elbow action that's probably not necessary, but the whip action's actually very, very similar. Um, and yeah, I mean that was really it. There's nothing in volleyball that's even remotely close to a
Right.
backhand. And like, I played softball a little bit, but that's like on the other side, so that wasn't leaking into it or anything. Yeah, the backhand was super awkward for me honestly, both were super awkward for me at first. But yeah, I almost have a little advantage over someone who comes from
Like
maybe
all
like
of
an
us.
ultimate
Yeah.
background. Yeah, exactly. I almost have an advantage over someone who comes from like an ultimate background of that I have all of the like explosiveness and all the discipline and all the good stuff that comes from playing other sports, but like very few of the mechanics actually interfere with one another, so I kind of had a blank slate in that regard.
Yeah, it's interesting. And there are so many athletes that come from other places, and I think we're seeing that a little bit more and more, like baseball or softball background, especially ultimate. Obviously, seems like a really obvious transition, but I'm sure there's other sports that some mechanics lend themselves well to disc golf, but some don't. I want to go back to form. You were kind of talking about early on. You started analyzing and critiquing your own technique, looking at other players to improve. On your Instagram, which everyone should already be following, you post a lot of form tips and advice, and I've also seen you mentioned participating in clinics, and now you're the only FPO coach for Power Disc Golf Academy alongside Yuli, Simon, and Ezra. So what do you enjoy most about that process of, teaching other people and helping them improve their game? Is there, are you kind of remembering what it was like to go through that process for yourself?
Yeah, a little bit, because like I said earlier, part of what got me hooked on disc golf and part of the reason I got so good is I just got hooked on the process of getting better. It's a really like rewarding and satisfying thing for me to like be working on a skill for a long time and then, make those kind of little clicks, when it clicks in your head, this little thing, and then it gets a little bit better, and then the next time, it gets a little better, gets a little better. Um, I love that. Like that's just as fun as any part of competing for me. And so being able to help someone, get that, have that moment of like, oh, this is what, this is how I need to do it. Like that feels just as satisfying as it does for me to actually have experienced that myself. And so to be able to help people, make little tiny incremental improvements is super satisfying. So like, every time, someone looks at a tip and they're like, oh, hey, this actually worked for me and I made a ton of progress, or I get feedback from people who are at one of my clinics, like that's super rewarding for me.
Is that something that as you continue to improve ever stops? You're now competing, consistently finishing in the top 10 on the pro tour. Are you still looking and analyzing and critiquing and tweaking things, or is it more of, you've settled into more of a comfortable routine maybe?
Yeah, it's certainly a lot less analysis, because I think in general my form's pretty good. It's certainly good enough to win. Most of the reasons, when if I have a bad week or whatever, it's very rarely has anything to do with my mechanics. But every now and again, if I feel like a mechanic is off, I might go, and kind of fiddle with it. But that happens not very often. Like this off season, I spent very little time on form. It was more on like kind of getting really dialed in with what I have, and kind of trying to take, accurate, getting to know like, okay, how do I aim this current iteration of my form really well, and how do I get other angles, and just trying to get really like automatic with that kind of stuff.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing more tips on your Instagram. Thank you so much for that.
Of course.
Earlier this year, we interviewed Chris Dickerson, and I want to ask you one of the questions that I asked him. Let's imagine tomorrow morning you wake up and Jeff Springs says, "Hey, Holyn, you're in charge today. Make whatever changes you want to the Disc Golf Pro Tour. What's on your agenda?"
Oh man, I don't want Jeff Springs' job. He has a stressful job. um, Man, yeah, that's tough. I think like the biggest change I would like to see, and something that I do think they're working towards, is just kind of more consistency week to week with like, what amenities are available, what the baskets, consistency of baskets, consistency of tee pads, like
Mm-hmm.
consistency of how we mark things. Because I think still a lot of stuff is left up to the clubs, or the local clubs, which a lot of them do a really good job. But then there, we'll have tournaments where the tee pads are great, and we'll have tournaments where the tee pads are terrible. Um, and we'll
Yeah.
have like sometimes courses like the tee pad's fine for the level of foot traffic you would get normally, week to week, but when you have hundreds of tour players playing multiple practice rounds, some of them multiple practice rounds in a day, and you throw in things like rain,
Yeah.
like we had really nice tee pads at the Open in Austin, but a few of them got worn down just because of the rain and how much traffic was going through there. And I know that's something that they are working on, so I don't want to like be harping on that too much. But I think also if we could have like a consistent basket, the same basket that we have every week, because sometimes we'll get to a course and they might have installed them incorrectly. There was a lot of discussion around that last weekend actually at Texas State's,
Oh, wow.
of I know some of the MPO players were like, the bolts that were used are too long and they're catching the chains and this is causing a problem. And I know like I walked through a practice round and I saw one where the chains were just like hanging, they weren't attached to the ring.
Oh, wow.
So stuff like that, which they're usually having to hurry to try and fix before the weekend. So I think just like better consistency week to week, overall. And then like some tournaments, they mark the OB really well, and it's really clear and it's really easy to see. Like I thought at Sprinkle Valley at US Women's, like I loved the way that they marked their OB. You could tell where it was.
Yeah.
They used the railroad ties instead of like stakes, so you were limiting like no discs were trickling in or trickling out, right? If they were really close, it was holding everything. And so it was kind of eliminating some of that variability. Whereas like this past weekend at Texas State's, like you were like squinting and like I can barely see the stakes, and you can't see the OB line until you're right on top of it.
Yeah.
So like little things like that.
How much of those sorts of issues do you feel like are just a property of disc golf being, a new, growing, evolving sport? And how much of it is, down to that, like the local, like you said, the local clubs, obviously every single club is going to be handling what they do or use differently because that's how it's always been done, or that's what they happen to have available. Or maybe in many cases, they have
Mm-hmm.
limited funds or time or volunteers available.
100%. I think it's totally both of those things. I mean, the Pro Tour is still really, really young, and like I think like the ideal situation would be, right, is that either they're hiring the people locally to do it, they're getting paid for it,
Hmm.
or they're like they have enough of a staff that they can send a team out, 2 weeks in advance to kind of make sure everything is looking good. But yeah, I mean, we rely heavily just on people volunteering their time. And so like yeah, like I mean, I'm super grateful for those people. I know that they're putting in hours and hours of work, and it's purely just out of love for the game. So yeah, it's just an interesting challenge, I guess. Coming up with those standards. And really it's going to come down to the Pro Tour kind of training the clubs,
Yeah.
of like, okay, this is how we want you guys to do G-pads. This is how want you guys to mark stuff, so that like it makes their job easier and they're not putting all of this work in just to have the Pro Tour come through and be like, oh man, the T pad, this couple T pads weren't very good, or the OB was really unclear, and it's like, well, man, I just put in all that hard work and you're complaining. So yeah, I think it's on the Pro Tour to, yeah, it's on the Pro Tour to develop and define what needs to happen, and then to clearly communicate that to whoever is in charge of setting it up. And then, what I would love to see down the line is like actual compensation for whoever's doing the work. But I know right now they're putting most of their money into like growing the purse sizes and making it, a livable career for everyone who's on the road full time, both players
Sure.
and staff. So um, it's just the kind of thing that's going to take time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for now, we'll let Jeff Spring continue to do what he does then.
Yeah, totally. I don't envy him one bit.
All right. So before our interview today, I reached out to our Discord server to see if they had any questions for you, and I have a couple for you. Jim3 asks, how did you decide to give up, or let's say move on from your engineering career to actually tackle disc golf full time? Was it a difficult decision, or in his words, a quote slam dunk in favor of disc golf?
Yeah, it's interesting because I had never really made a big decision quite like that ever. And it was interesting how much
Yeah.
anxiety there was before making the decision versus after deciding, like, and I had a plan. Like, never felt like anxious about it, never felt worried about it. Um, but really, I kind of came to a point where we were planning to move back to Texas from California because it was getting really expensive and we kind of wanted to be back closer to family.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, try to find a job. And I had just come off of a couple, like my first two A tier wins, against pretty competitive fields. I think my rating at the time was in the like low 930s. And I kind of knew I'd played a few events and like I'd cashed a bunch on the Pro Tour, the few events that I did play. And so I kind of knew like I was at that level, and that was without dedicating 100% of my free time to it. That was just, getting hour of practice in a few days a week after work, right? Um, and so I was kind of at this crossroads of like, okay, well, I find a job in Austin, and I just like my heart was not in the job search, because I kind of knew in the back of my mind it's like disc golf's right there. I'm good enough to do it, and so I kind of just like, I don't know, this is kind of engineer of me or what, but like I ran, the numbers. I looked at like what would the cost be to go on tour, like if I were to get something to tour, and like what would that cost, what would be involved with all of that, how much money do I have saved up, and I was kind of like, actually, I have enough money saved up that I could just do nothing for a year
Yeah.
and be fine. Like I wouldn't run out of money or anything as long as I wasn't like spending like crazy. And so I kind of decided like, okay, well, I'll get, we already have a truck. I'll get like a cheap little RV. And like the monthly payment was gonna be like 150 a month or something like that. And I was like, as long as I'm averaging like a little bit better than last cash, I should be able to break even on that. I was like, we'll just do it for a year and see how it goes. I was like, engineering's not going anywhere. If I take a year off, I can find another job if it doesn't work out, and it ended up working out.
I like the analytical approach. My wife is a numbers nerd, so that's exactly how we sort of went through not entirely similar thing, but I worked for Apple for over 10 years, and I was just like over the corporate machine lifestyle. I didn't really want to be a part of it anymore. The I sat through so many
Mm-hmm.
meetings where people were using all their businessy business terms, and I would leave the meeting going like, did we accomplish anything today? Did we talk about anything real, or did we just go through our like list of words that sound like they're smart or whatever? And so we did a similar thing where we're like, she had a good job, we had a lot of money saved up from me working there for so long, and it was like, I really want to just do our disc golf business. I want to make YouTube videos. I want to do this. Can we do this? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a long process. So, we looked ahead to that and worked toward it for a couple years. So it's cool that you were able to like
Yeah.
sort of test the waters and see that you had what it took to get to that level. You knew you could perform at that level, and then it was
Mm-hmm.
about like you know creating the space to do that. Did that add any pressure for you when you were actually out on the course? Did it now like, okay, I need to cash to pay the bills?
Yeah, I've never thought about how much money I'm gonna make like during a round. It's just never I've never thought of that because like I don't know, I had like a safety net a little bit. Like I had a lot of savings, which I know most players don't have, so that could totally be different for someone else. But also,
Yeah.
like that first year, I was never really in danger of missing cash. I think my worst finish was like 20th or 21st or something like that. So I was never really like maybe one tournament where I was in danger of maybe missing cash, but like I was always kind of hovering in that like around 10th place range. And so it was like, okay, if I can make a push, I get a top 10. If I don't, like, well, I still made plenty of money, that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's never been a concern really.
Back to our Discord questions. Nicholas asks, how much pressure does being a sponsored FPO player for a big organization, you went from Dynamic and now to Discraft, bring to competitive rounds? And then, of course, even to practice? Like, do you feel any added pressure just knowing that you're representing that company as well?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I feel pressure when I compete, but it doesn't come from Discraft. It just 100% comes from me. I don't think anyone is as like has as high of like desire for me to do well as I do. Um and yeah, and also like
Nice.
Discraft, they don't like hit me up and be like, "Why'd you get 16th last week? Like what's going on?" You know, they're very like, "Hey, what do you need? Go do your thing." And then
Yeah.
obviously they set very clear standards for like this is what you have to do to maintain elite team status, and stuff like that. And then obviously I do know that like if I am consistently not doing well, there are a lot of people who would love to take that spot from me.
Yeah.
Um, but and I definitely do look at like, okay, how did Valerie do this week? How did Missy do this week? And you know, where did I compare to them? Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it feels more like Discraft's they're rooting for me, right? Like they want me to do well. I don't feel like they really put additional pressure, although I know there is an expectation of like a certain standard and like they expect me to be in the mix, you know, week after week. But they also know that the best way to, in general, to get the best out of players is to just like give them what they need and let them do their thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and that reminds me a little bit of, and I guess the best example I can give is soccer. So I'm a big soccer fan. I follow a couple different teams, but when you are, let's say, a top performer in that team, what is the pressure to continue performing other than like what comes from yourself? And that's knowing that there's someone on the bench who wants your spot, right? And so that could be somebody who's from like,
Mm-hmm.
Discraft's like tour team. I'm not sure if that's the right term for whatever's below the elite team. Sorry, Discraft. But, again, like that sort of idea, like there's somebody who wants that spot. And so if don't keep your foot on the gas,
Mm-hmm.
someone else is going to overtake you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I definitely will kind of be checking like, okay, there's four of us. Where do I rank right now? One, two, three, or four. It's like you just don't want to be that number four spot.
Nice, nice. All right, so I want to move on to a slightly more serious topic. And everyone in disc golf likes to talk about growing the sport. We hear it all the time, but I want to take some time to talk specifically about women's disc golf. And bear with me for a moment. I'm going to throw a bunch of numbers out there. Since you said you like numbers, you might be into this. I was doing some research. Our channel, Six Sided Discs, our analytics show that our audience is 98.9% men. That's maybe something I can work on improving. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
A recent B tier here in Columbus had 266 players. Only 7 were women. That's 2% of the field. Last year's Brent Hambrick Memorial Open, which is our big A tier in Columbus, had 4 women out of 137 on the pro weekend and 10 out of 280 on the amateur weekend, or 2.9 and 3.5% of the field, respectively. Now, I do want to point out, no shade thrown at our local club, which is run by a woman president and has done a ton to work to grow women's disc golf. They also offer early registration to women's divisions, junior divisions, stuff like that. A few more statistics. According to UDisc's Women in Disc Golf article as of March 1st, 2022, 14% of active PDGA members are women. But I chose just at random 3 other individual sports to compare, or somewhat individual sports to compare to that. 26% of on-course golfers are women, 46% of tennis players are women, and 39% of pickleball players are women. So all of this is to say, I'm not an expert on the topic, but what do you think it is about disc golf or the culture of disc golf or where disc golf happens that is maybe preventing similar participation among women in disc golf.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've done a lot of like activities in the past where I've just always kind of been the woman in a kind of a man space. Engineering's that way.
Yeah.
And disc golf's that way. I think like it kind of it's the kind of thing where once it's established that like there's a group of women in the space, it almost like explodes because I saw it happen when I was in California where like two girls just decided like, hey, every time we see a woman on the course, if she's just like following her boyfriend around and she's like, or she's not throwing or she is throwing, we're gonna invite them to come play with us on Sunday.
Love
And
that.
so they were kind of creating, a space where it's like we don't care if you're terrible, you're gonna come play and you're gonna come and enjoy spending time with other women who like the sport. Because I think like for me, like I don't care if I suck in front of a bunch of guys, like I'm fine with that.
Sure.
But not everybody feels that way. Um, yeah, and there, even whether you're good or not, like sometimes there have been times where I've gone to the course and just the sheer fact that I'm there is like a crazy thing and it attracts attention whether I want it to or not.
Yeah.
So I think like a lot of women they like having a space where it's like it's mostly other women, other people who are like them, who have a similar skill level and they don't feel a pressure to like keep up. Can't tell you how many women I've had at a clinic where they're like, I don't need to throw really far. I just want to be able to keep up with my husband when I go out.
Mm.
So it's like they want to play, but a lot of times they maybe feel like they're not good enough or they're kind of a burden on their group that they're playing with. So I think creating spaces where like it's totally fine to not be very good. And I think for the tournament side of things, like having layouts that are designed for women and for more maybe newer women. Because I think back to when I don't know if the Brent Hambrick layouts changed much since when I played it, but I know when I played it, it's like, yeah, if you don't throw 350, this isn't fun.
Yeah.
It's not a fun layout if you don't throw really far. And so, having an interesting, shorter layout for those other divisions, I think is really important. And then honestly, if like you're looking to copy anybody, like look at the people in Austin. Look at Stephanie Vincent, Chrissy Fountain, and the work Mint Discs is doing to do like the Wildflower Tour and all this stuff that's just geared towards women. Like they're doing an incredible job, and they've got a huge women's disc golf community down there. So honestly, I would hit them up if you're a listener and you're wondering what to do. Just I would reach out to them and just copy whatever it is they're doing because they're doing it right.
No, I love that. I think that's great. Yeah, I think you made a couple great points there. And one of the, I was asking my wife about this. So she's obviously experienced mostly everything about disc golf through whatever I'm doing. I started, playing again in 2020. I started, getting back into the sport. I started a business alongside her and like she's involved in it, but not in the like, the disc related stuff, not in going and playing and stuff as much. Although I should say there's like an entire shelf or more of these discs back here that she picked out for herself, even though she doesn't get out and play often. So one of the things that she mentioned in sort of thinking about this topic was that a lot of times disc golf courses just don't have the facilities available, like whether it's restrooms or whatever, where, men through just how we are, have the advantage of, well, there's a bush over there, who cares? And this is even this has even come up on coverage recently.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
also that sometimes disc golf courses are out in the woods, in in a park or whatever. And like here, a couple of our courses are at parks that are, I would say, not like the nicest neighborhood. And it wouldn't surprise me if a woman wouldn't feel as comfortable going and playing a solo round there, by themselves, where like who knows who's going to come around. So there's those other like little things about what disc golf is and where it takes place that might just make it a little less accessible to some people.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when I was, coming up playing in California, like most of those places were actually pretty safe. Like Huntington Beach is a pay to play course.
Nice.
So yeah, that's totally a thing. And yeah, I hear you about the facilities. That's like really annoying. Even at pro tour events, there'll be times where I'm like, you don't have enough stuff out here. You gotta have bathrooms and trash cans.
Yeah.
It's not okay to just have bathrooms. But yeah, that's absolutely a thing. Like, yeah, you don't want to have to go off into the woods. That's no fun. Like, it's not easy
No,
for us.
absolutely not.
But yeah, I wonder if just having more like, yeah, I wonder if just having more courses where like it's lightly staffed or it's pay to play and you have like enough traffic through there, that it feels more safe versus like the ones that are in public parks that may or may not be in a good area of town that don't have a ton of traffic. Yeah, you definitely feel like you have to have a group in order to go
Hmm.
play. Um, yeah, so that could be the kind of thing where like maybe, a women's league or like just a group that kind of gets together, even if it's not a league, like not a competitive thing, like playing, there's a little bit of that safety in numbers kind of element.
Yeah, definitely. That's very true. It's obviously not something that I feel like you and I can solve today, but I'm glad we're having the conversation, and maybe it gives some people perspective, people that are listening or watching, to think about what they can do in their local community, if anything, to try and make it more inclusive for anyone who wants to play disc golf, whether that's just making parts of the course more accessible, facilities more accessible, encouraging and inviting people to come out and play, or I think great point on layouts. I don't like hearing players and I've heard this many times, players at tournaments complaining about players from other divisions, whether that's MA4 or FA4 or juniors or something, slowing everyone down or something, because of course they're having to play a layout that was not really designed for them. And certainly it's not their fault that they have to throw a few extra throws when the hole's 350, 400 feet long.
Yeah, definitely.
From your first amateur event to 28th at Worlds in just 17 months, and now after just a few short years, you're a major winner, 2 podiums and 2 top 10s already this season. What are some goals, if any, that you're setting yourself for the rest of this season and beyond?
Yeah, throw pink, it's a weird thing because it's not a major, but it's technically an A tier, but it feels like a major. And as far as I'm concerned, I beat the field that's at an Elite Series event every week, right? But
Yeah.
still hunting for that first, right, Elite Series win, that first like actual major win. But that's kind of big picture, but like getting a
Sure.
little more granular with it, like trying to just build consistency, trying to figure out like, when I do get into a bad spot mentally, how do I get out of it? How do I start, better? How do I start my rounds better and kind of build momentum throughout the round? All of those little things that will eventually add up, to better and better finishes. So I'm trying to focus kind of on that day to day, mostly the mental side of the game.
Holyn, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. We'll look forward to seeing how you do the rest of this season. Everyone, you can see Holyn Handley shredding courses with her 2024 Tour Series Vulture, which I'll shout out one more time, on the Disc Golf Network, Jumbez Pro, or a Disc Golf Pro Tour stop near you. Holyn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg.
I hope you all enjoyed this episode of All Six Sides. Thanks again to Holyn Handley for joining us. Who would you like to see on a future episode? Leave a comment down below. For Six Sided Discs, I'm Greg. We'll see you in the next one. If you like this content and want to see more, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, or supporting us on Patreon. Your support makes this content possible.